Okay, so continuing with our paper, the next 10 MCQs. Question 11, a firm wishes to eliminate competition and become a monopoly. So before I even look at the options, one very popular way is to implement a strategy that is known as predatory pricing, in which you reduce prices in order to gain market share and hence drive out competition. So here it's pretty simple. You can just go with the reduced prices. 12, in many developed economies, clothes are designed by small firms and retailed by large firms. Okay, what is the most likely explanation for this pattern? So by retailed by large firms, it means that they are sold or the final process is made by large firms. Shayar?
हाँ,
Okay.
more towards like marketing वगैरह maybe.
All right. So the all that's related with the finished product more of. Anyhow, so what is the most likely explanation for this? Clothes design firms. So why are these firms small? So they need to
देखो
be.
C और D तो वैसे भी नहीं हो सकता, तो वो तो you can eliminate आराम से.
Which one?
C and D, because these are small firms, so they can't have a high MES.
All right. So if there are high barriers to entry into the industry, then small firms would not be able to enter. So that wouldn't be it. And if you need to employ highly specialized and skilled workers, well, small firms probably couldn't afford to employ, those workers, which would probably ask for a very high wage. So
If you see
a
C, गलत हो जाएगा.
yeah, so if small firms normally, so a high minimum efficient scale means that you need to have a very large output in order to extract all the economies of scale, and that's just not possible with small firms because they can't produce that large an output. So you can conclude with A, because if you need to be flexible to cope with frequent fashion changes, so flexibility comes with being small, not with being large. That is an advantage of small firms, and a reason why they can survive in this particular in profession, one could say, on this particular task. And clothes retail firms, well, they are large because they need to exploit marketing economies of scale. So that's fine. You can properly exploit economies of scale if you are large, because then you can have a large output and produce at minimum average cost. So you can go with A for that. 13, what is likely to have its cause in the separation of ownership and control in a firm? Um, all right. What is likely to have its cause? So, what are they trying to say here? Uh, to have its cause
I,
in.
if you see the options वगैरह ना, तो फिर मुझे समझ आ रहा है क्वेश्चन में पूछना क्या चाह रहा है वो. See, if you read प्रिंसिपल एजेंट प्रॉब्लम, वो होती यही है बेसिकली ना कि someone else owns it but मैनेजर वगैरह कंट्रोल करते हैं.
Yeah, so you can go with that, and as Shariar put it, the principal agent problem is when someone makes decisions for someone else or on someone else's behalf mainly. So you might be the owner, but however someone else is making the decisions for you. Obviously this is not a case of contestable markets. It does not have any link with diseconomies of scale, and it does not have any link with game theory, which is basically where your prisoner's dilemma comes in. So you can just on those bases, you could just eliminate the three. And even if you didn't know what the principal agent problem was, just go with that. 14, a firm employs a worker who adds less to output than the previous worker employed. So that basically means that the marginal utility, the previous worker's marginal utility, because again, sorry, not a marginal utility, what am I saying? So marginal, what you can say, product, one could say, the product that they're making. So the previous worker had a higher marginal product, that this worker basically has a lower marginal product, because that is the idea. The marginal idea is the additional product that the worker produces. One could say, as they're hired. So decreasing marginal cost. No, this increases marginal cost. This is not diseconomies of scale. This is not increasing returns to scale. In fact, it is diminishing returns. because the idea is that you increased your variable factor. However, the output that you got was less than before. So labor is clearly a variable factor, but the output, the marginal output, is less than it was before. Anyhow, 15, to increase the number of cleaners from at a local school from 10 to 11, the employer has to raise the hourly pay from uh, 8 to 8.5. What is the marginal cost of labor per hour to the employer? So this would be 0.5 into 11, sorry, no, into 10 plus 8.5. And while I put this in my calculator, Shariar will explain you why we do this.
अच्छा, I don't do this with this way. मैं दूसरे तरीके से करता हूँ.
Okay, so you just explain that, I guess.
The way I do it is simply like 10 into 8 and then the difference between that or 11 into 8.5.
Okay, so Shayar does marginal cost, right? So he just calculates the old cost and he calculates the new cost. The old cost would be 8 into 10. You were paying $8 into 10 to 10 basically employers. That was your old cost. You want to calculate your new cost, so that is 8.5. And understand, you're going to be paying this to all 11 workers. Now it's not just going to be to that last worker, because you're not discriminating here. You have to pay every worker the same. So that gives you 8.5 into 11 minus 80, which again gives you 13.5. And in fact, I believe that is a simpler way to look at it. So let's just stick with the explanation for that. Okay. So 16, for a firm in imperfect competition, the marginal revenue product of labor at any given level of employment is equal to, now if you think about this, the marginal revenue product is basically the revenue you earn from selling, what do you say, from selling the additional product that your extra unit of labor produces. So it is basically, you can say MPP into price. We don't, so that's, it's clearly not MPP. MPP is your marginal physical product. So it's just the product that, the marginal product of that particular unit of labor. So it's not MPP into wage rate, clearly. MPP multiplied by marginal revenue. Can we say this, in fact?
This should be वैसे according to me, because like A or B तो don't make sense anyway.
All right, because so we can say, see, I'd be more comfortable saying this if it was in perfect competition. So let's read A and B before I start to explain C. So marginal revenue divided by the number employed. So the marginal, well, why would you divide this by the number employed? Marginal revenue, by very definition, is the extra revenue of one more unit sold. So that doesn't really make sense here. Marginal revenue divided by the wage rate. Again, these are just very odd options, so don't really seem to make sense. Now, if it's, we wanted marginal physical, we wanted to know, the reason why C is correct in our opinion is because marginal physical product, you wanted to figure out the revenue you get by selling the extra product, that particular labor produces. So if you think about it, the extra revenue is marginal revenue, and the extra but the extra product is marginal physical product. I don't know. I'm not very comfortable with this option either, Shariar, because if you think about it, then the marginal revenue should just be marginal revenue. In fact, if you multiply output by price,
देखो, if it can't be A or B आराम से. So do you think it can be D अगर C नहीं होता तो?
No, it can't be D.
There's no other option.
No, I would like to look at A and B again then. If it's marginal revenue divided by the number employed, well, that doesn't make any sense. Marginal revenue divided by the wage rate. Well, these are just weird options. So I guess we will have to stick with C, because MPP into, we're just trying to figure out the additional the additional revenue you're earning for that particular output. So marginal revenue. So the reason why, in fact, I can be satisfied with this answer is because marginal revenue is the additional revenue you will earn for a particular output, and marginal physical product is the output that the additional labor produces. So let's say the additional labor produces 3 units of output, and marginal revenue is, let's say, $5 per unit. So then that should give you MRP of 15, and that does make sense, in fact. So we can, not just by elimination, but we can be satisfied with C. Anyhow, 17. Which policy would be most effective in achieving a more equal distribution of disposable incomes between households? So government support for trade unions. Well, trade unions do normally fight for the for workers and for their incomes and so on, but I'm not too sure if it's the most effective policy. Normally trade unions and support for trade unions isn't normally seen as something to have more equitable distribution of income, because it's not, so because you need something that's taking from the rich and giving to the poor, something of that sort. So import duties on manufactured goods, well, not really. I mean, it will just make things more expensive for everyone. National minimum wage policy could work because it helps those who are at the bottom, who don't earn that much. It helps them earn more. um, Progressive income taxes, now that also works because what it does, it reduces the disposable income of the rich, so that goes down. So obviously that helps make, well, make things more equitable because the rich have less, and usually the revenue earned from progressive taxes is then spent on providing the people at the bottom with stuff like unemployment benefits and stuff of that sort. So I think while C is still fine, but the most effective policy, I believe we can conclude with D.
D makes sense.
Yeah, and it's something that you normally hear. Progressive taxation is something that governments use all the time in order to achieve better, in order to redistribute income more, fair, more equitably. Anyhow, a government regulates the price charged by a monopolist. In which circumstance, will such intervention improve economic efficiency? Now we have to see over here what's the diagram of the monopolist first. So you had demand, which is average revenue. You had MR, you had MC, and you had, let's say, AC going somewhere like this, whatever. And the monopolist was producing somewhere here. So this is price, this is quantity. The government sets the price where average revenue equals marginal cost. I believe that would work, in fact, right?
E is equals to वाला point A.
Yeah, because allocative efficiency is when price is equals to MC, and if you look at the diagram a little closely, so you had demand, which was average revenue, and you had MC. So if you pick this particular point and you pick the price here, obviously price is equals to MC. So economic efficiency, that would definitely improve because allocative efficiency would improve. Let's look at the other options anyways. The government sets the price where marginal cost is below average cost. That doesn't have any link. The intervention results in an increase in producer surplus. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean efficiency. It could just mean the monopolist is exploiting the consumers, and predatory pricing is never really good. Anyhow, 19, what would cause estimates of the money value of the measure of economic welfare, so mu, for a country to be greater than the value of the gross national product? So I think they're basically saying that in which cases would mu rank a country better than what you would see in your GNP, right?
Mm-hmm.
So measure of economic welfare would take stuff other than just GNP. It would not look favorably on stuff like externalities. It would rank you worse. In fact, property income received from abroad is included in your national product, so that's not an option because it will be the same in both places. Regrettable necessities, if they are regrettables, it negatively marks you, so that doesn't give you that greater factor. But definitely measure of economic welfare does include the value of non-marketed activities and leisure. Obviously, if citizens have time for leisure, that is a positive, and it will rank you higher or greater than what you would see in your GNP. So that would be your answer. Okay, so we're into the weird questions. 20. In 2012, a UN report calculated the stock of wealth of 20 countries in terms of human, natural, and produced resources. This is measured as the Inclusive Wealth Index. The diagram shows the percentage change in the IWI between a particular range of time of the economies with the fastest and the slowest growth in IWI. It shows their 2008 GDP per head. Um, okay, so the change in inclusive wealth index, uh, and I believe these are the economies with the fastest growth and the slowest. Slowest would obviously be, especially if you're going negative, but then you're just not growing at all. Um, So what can be concluded from the diagram? A low level of GDP per head, and I believe GDP per head is this. Yeah, GDP per head meant an inability to build stocks of wealth. So if you look at it, no, I don't believe that works because Kenya had a very low level of GDP, and yet it really had a very large stock of wealth. No country was able to prevent depletion of its natural resources. Well, in fact, if you look at Russia, well, if you look at natural here, and even if you look at China, both of those cases, you look at this particular pattern, those are both in the negative. So, well, that clearly means that there was depletion. So, China and Russia, and even Nigeria, three countries weren't able to prevent. Uh, so three countries weren't able to prevent depletion, but one country was, Kenya was able to prevent depletion of its natural resources. So that you can cross out that. The faster the growth in a country's IWI, the higher was its GDP. Well, that kind of works in the case of China, but not really in the case of Kenya because it has a pretty fast growth, but it has small GDP. Russia has a pretty high GDP, but like a um, pretty disappointing growth, so that doesn't really work. There was an increase in human resources in all four countries. So human resources are this, and this was in the positive in China, this was in the positive in China, this was in Kenya, this was in the positive in Nigeria, this was also in the positive in Russia. So that means if as long as they're towards the right of zero, that means there's a positive change, which means this is an increase. So that is that. We can now check our answers and see where we stand.